What is leadership and why should we care about it? What's really at the heart of leadership? And what's the greatest need for leadership today? Welcome to the Search Bar. You've got questions, let's find some answers. Bypass Google and sidle up to the Search Bar instead as Central Michigan University's amazing team of experts answer some of the internet's most asked questions. I'm your host, Adam Sparks, and on today's episode, we're searching for answers on leadership. Dan Gaken, the director of the Sarah R. Opperman Leadership Institute at Central Michigan University, is here to help us do just that. Hi, Dan.
Adam, I'm glad to be here.
All right, we're going to talk about your area of expertise today, which is leadership, which is it's a little esoteric, right? It's kind of one of these things where when somebody told me, "Hey, we're going to talk about leadership with Dan," I was like, "That's exciting. What the hell is that?"
Yes.
I think we all have like some sort of an idea of who is a leader, who's been a leader in our life, or who's a leader that we've seen on television or something, or who's a political leader or a sports leader. But like when we start to like dig down into that and like how we value that in our day-to-day functions or professional functions, it's a thing that becomes more tangible, or at least more studyable, is sort of what I've come to. And I've been kind of being tutored on this by a 22-year-old who's been leading me in kind of my understanding of it at an academic level. So I just wanted to kind of help level set that for people who might be kind of going, what is leadership and why should I care about leadership at all? So I was hoping if you could give us kind of what your definition of it is, and maybe just give people that introduction for like why it should be important to them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When folks say leadership, that can mean anything and everything depending on context. For some folks, that's very positional. That's their manager at work. That's the manager of a baseball team. That folks, people that see in those leadership roles. What I will tell you is that question you asked, what is leadership? And you said, hell if I know. That's part of our discipline, is trying to narrow that down. There are more than 900 published academic definitions of leadership. What that should tell you is, as a discipline, we don't know. And so at Central Michigan University in the Leadership Institute, what we always advocate is we want folks to find a model, a definition of leadership that works for them, that helps them create influence, make changes, and build the world that they want to live in. And so when folks ask me what my definition of leadership is, even in the Leadership Institute, we have not adopted one definition. We've adopted a definition of leadership education, right? We're helping folks create change in an ever-changing and challenging world, and it's to make this world better for others. And so when folks ask me, who's a leader? I don't know that I care about their title, what profession they're in. I want to know, is this somebody who's trying to make themselves better and make this world better for others?
What makes somebody an effective leader? I know when I was kind of reading about this a little bit, and when I was talking to my intern, Michael, who I think you know, we were talking a little bit about kind of trait-based leadership, skill-based leadership, and empathetic leadership, right? And I felt like those were, for me, at least three good categories for me to start to develop an understanding of how we might look at these things. And again, I know that's kind of like academic, really, really high, but could you kind of define those three for us?
So when we first, and I say we, like I was there doing this, right?
Yeah, it was you from the
right,
beginning.
yes. But we think about those first leadership scholars. They came out of the world of political science and history, and we started to take a look at positional leaders, and we tried to ascertain what allows these folks to either achieve these positions or succeed in those roles. And actually, a lot of those early theories we called great man theories because there was this belief that somehow they were born different than us. To give you a clue of whether or not we got it right, some of those theories, right, physical traits, the things that we thought of traditionally, right, you're tall, or you had a deep voice, or gender, or wealth, right? How did you get to become king? It's a lot easier to get that job if your dad was king, right? I mean, in the leadership field, we transitioned away from trait theory and really moved into skill-based leadership. And for folks like me, that was exciting because we thought, if we're saying leaders aren't born, that leaders are made, what that means is I can teach folks to be leaders. But the same pitfalls that we had for those trait theories, right? How do you make a list that's exhaustive, that universally predicts whether or not somebody will be successful. You can have someone that's a very skilled orator. You can have somebody who is a wonderful decision maker. You can have somebody that's got exceptional interpersonal skills. And for some reason, we can never predict universally whether or not they're going to be successful as a leader. And so while we still do some of those things, I'm sure, especially in a corporate setting, we think about what are skills, what are the knowledge and attitudes, what are the things that we want to teach folks, but there's not a list. And so really where we're at today in terms of contemporary leadership theory is this idea of leader match. Now, what that means is it's not just about the leader. It's about that leader's relationship with their followers. And now it's about context. And so it's now infinitely complex. What that means is if we're working together on a team, it doesn't always matter what my leadership style is. It depends on how you and I work together and what that task is in that environment. And now there's so many variables, right? Is there a deadline or do we have time to work on this? Are you comfortable being in front of this team or are you more comfortable working behind the scenes? And so when we think about leadership in a leader match context, what that means is as a leader, my primary job is to get to know the people that I'm working with. People ask me, what's the one thing that you want leaders or aspiring leaders to know? There's nothing that enhances your capacity to lead like listening to others, to get to know the people that you're working with. What can you do to let them be at their best?
That falls into that kind of empathy as leadership,
Yes.
right? So I'm servicing to a certain extent the needs of the individual that I need to be leading. Is it co-equal? Is it more? Is it less than the needs of the institution? Like, how do you kind of make those two things mesh? I think that's one of those ones where, if I spill you off down a long road, go down the long road, it's fine. It feels like that democratization of the workplace is something that's hot. It's hot to talk about right now politically, but just I think functionally, if we kind of just step down to that interpersonal connection, it's something that I feel like students at an institution like this are more expectant of out of their leadership, where what I get and what I value here should hopefully be in line with what the output of the institution is. Like, but if you're if you're in your leadership position, like sometimes you have to find a balance between those. Like
those models of leadership that try and help a leader balance that. There's two ways to look at that. Sometimes we put those each on an axis, right? About interpersonal relations or task-oriented behaviors. Now, I think we're in a world where we understand that those are not mutually exclusive, that we can both care for each other, get along, get to know each other, be respectful, and understand what that goal is. Now, as a leader, what I tell folks is there's nothing more important for a leadership skill than having emotional intelligence, right? And when I say emotional intelligence, I think a lot of folks, right, they're very familiar with IQ, right? We know what IQ is, right? That 1 to 200 scale of how bright you are. And there's this belief, and I know there's some work in the psychology areas, different disciplines that's challenging this now, but for a long time, we believed IQ was a fixed point, right? You are born with what you get. Now, whether or not we live in a world where everybody has access to achieve that potential, that's a different story. But EQ, when we're talking about emotional intelligence, there's a benefit there because that's a process, right? That's a growth area. That's something I can practice. And when I say EQ, I know some folks are less familiar. It's about how comfortable I am working with others. There's that two halves to that, right? Me knowing my own emotions, right? What causes me to feel hope or anxiousness or fear or love, and understanding that those emotions and how I show up impact my team. I get to decide how I show up. Now, in our day-to-day lives, there are things that are going to cause us to feel anxiousness. I mean, there's a lot of lights in here, right?
Yeah.
That's what I've always wanted to know about the podcasting world is there's two of us in this room. Why am I wearing headphones, right? But I have that choice of knowing, but this is a bit surreal. You're in the lights, you're thinking about this, but then to think, how do I want to show up? I can rationalize that and say it's unusual, but it's just Adam and I having a conversation. I get to recognize that emotion and decide how I want to show up. Now, when we take that to the other side of that equation, to the interpersonal side, that's where that empathy comes in. Now, I'm not just thinking about my emotions, but I've got to be conscious of how those make you feel. To be able to connect with somebody on an emotional level, to cause them to change a behavior or to vote a certain way or join an organization or to somehow help my movement, I can't do that. I'll never be able to do that unless I know what matters to you. And so that level of empathy, of listening and listening to understand, is at the heart of leadership. One of the things I advocate with students or with professional clients is always to enter every space as both a teacher and a learner, and to think about how can we create spaces where everybody brings value. When you've got folks that are excelling in leadership roles, what they're doing is they're looking around, they're making asset maps, whether it's a physical document or if that's something they're doing in their head, of talent to know who excels at what, where can people thrive. The best leaders are the ones that are concerned with the folks under them, not above them, right? They're taking a look at how can I make the people around me better.
If I want to have an exercise, or even if it's just a mental exercise that helps me kind of not do the astronaut at the party thing, right? When that, I don't know if you know this, I don't even know where I heard this, but like the idea that if the astronauts at the party, their tendency is to sit around and listen to everyone's story and then go, I walked on the moon. Like they're not listening to anyone else's story. And I think it's a very human thing to do, is go, I'm just waiting for my turn to have a better story. And I'm always going to win because I walked on the moon. Like how do you fight that urge, right? Because sometimes that urge is like, maybe you are the astronaut and it is just always going to win the story contest, but it might just be, I know where my values stand and you're saying something that's antithetical to my values. Rather than hear you, I'm going to wait for the space for me to come in the conversation or if we're planning something and go, no, this, like what's an exercise? What's something that somebody can do to be a better listener?
You know, we've got a document. I'm sure it's something we could share with folks that are listening to this. It's a PDF that we created. That's a step-by-step process to practicing active listening. But it starts by, being conscious and being intentional and saying, I'm going to practice this. And inviting somebody to share, right? Inviting somebody to share and meaning it. No, Adam, we disagree on this, but tell me your thoughts. And I'm trying to understand. And so while you're sharing that story with me, I'm reflecting. I'm thinking about how this either aligns or doesn't align with my own lived experiences. I'm going to restate that. I want to make sure that I can say that back to you and honor the authenticity. Is this what I'm hearing? I want to make sure that throughout this conversation that I'm paraphrasing, that I'm restating in a way that keeps it true to your words, but ensures that I understand, and that I want to reflect. Now, the most important part of that process is to validate. For me to say, even though that's not what I believe, I recognize that that's your truth, right? There's nothing that stops a conversation like saying, but, because that moment where I've sought to make your story less valid or less true than mine, I've shut you down. And it's one of the hardest things to do, but it is something that we get better at. That's the beauty of emotional intelligence. When we talk with employers, CMU is part of NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and we ask first destination folks, what is it that you need in a college graduate? And they're telling us things like communication skills and problem solving, those things that we define as leadership. To be able to do that, to be able to have conversations about and across difference, that sets folks up to be successful. So when we're talking about these emotional intelligence skills that are leadership, that's the beauty of it, is you can grow in it and they matter, right? These are the things that are transforming lives by expanding my capacity to create change, by building relationships with people. It sounds so simple, but it's very difficult to do, to actually be present and listen to somebody.
What does it mean to be a follower who is using leadership?
Yeah.
What does that look like for somebody who's, I don't have charges in this organization that I have. I don't really tell anybody what to do, but I still need to lead. How's that different?
I think the folks that, wherever you're at in an organization, right? If you are at the top of that org chart, or if you're the newest member of that organization, the folks that excel in those roles are the one that realize that leadership is always a continuum between leadership and followership. If you're at the top of that, that's about being vulnerable and being okay with that asking for help is not a weakness. If you are that new person, if you don't have that positional leadership, if you're not, if there's no authority that comes with the title or the job description, understanding that the attitude that you bring to that team changes the way that experience for others. Leaders create value for others. It's as simple as that. And so wherever you're at in that organization, what can I do to make this work easier, more productive at a higher level for the people around me. People notice that. I don't care if you're the new person on any sort of work group or team. If you're making value for others, if you're creating accolades that team recognizes, your teammates value those contributions, and understanding that is leadership and that's reciprocated, right? If you're that person that's on that team that's creating value, and I'm not talking about doing extra work or unpaid work. Those things we want to be conscious of, but are we able to be kind to others? Can we offer suggestions and help? Are you that person that protects voices from below? Too often we see people in teams that either because of their identity or position or title or their seniority have fantastic ideas that the organization can't benefit from because people aren't listening. Can you create space and say, hey, I think Lance has an idea that we should all be listening to.
We're going to talk about leaders in pop culture, and they're all fictional leaders.
Okay.
So I want you to either tell me what kind of a leader you think they would be, or rank them. Just give me your one sentence reaction to their leadership. Okay. Monty Burns.
Oh, from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
That's old school. That's your autocratic, I'm in charge because I own the company. That power plant's going under.
Right. I think it
doesn't work anymore.
My favorite Monty Burns line is, chew now, swallow on your own time. Ron Swanson.
Ron, right? Anti-big government, but is also somebody who's willing to do the work. There's some parks in Pawnee, Indiana, that I'm sure are a much more beautiful place because of Ron Swanson's woodworking skills. We use Ron as an example for too many things, usually on what we're trying to order for breakfast. But that's someone that probably politically I don't agree with, but I would work well with because I appreciate them getting it done.
Michael Scott.
Too often I've been compared to Michael Scott.
I could see it.
Right. And nobody's ever given me the world's best boss mug, but
someone get on that.
I think they intend it as a compliment. But the number of times folks in my office will send me memes like, this is us. And I'm like, which one am I? So I don't want to be too hard on Michael Scott.
Because there's empathetic Michael Scott and there's totally unaware Michael
Scott. Right. But Michael Scott leads a team of talented individuals that do exceptional work because he lets them do what they do best.
Right. Ted Lasso. I gave you a manager.
Oh, yeah. Ted Lasso is now why I watch soccer. I think I know what's going on. But that's somebody that highlighted the importance of having this conversation about mental health. Mental health is health. And we think about this generation and those movements that they've started, ending stigma around mental health and so many other social issues takes leadership. And that's what Ted's doing in the show.
Darth Vader.
The end of that, Darth Vader's,
right?
Is he the hero?
It's a good question.
Right. So I think that shows us that leadership is deeper than the composures of our masks. You need to know the full arc and story. And there is an opportunity for redemption. Doesn't matter where you're at. You can it's never too late to do good.
Right. And maybe Darth Vader was a victim of bad leadership himself.
I think so.
Right? Because Palpatine. Dan, thanks so much. It's been enlightening. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for being here today and telling us about leadership.
I appreciate the invite. Leadership's an important topic. It's important for folks to know it is for everyone. Wherever you're at in this world, you can make it better.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for stopping by the search bar. Subscribe or follow so that you never have to search for the next episode.